So we are seeing the beginnings of a banking crisis that could take down all the banks all over the place, and it is causing a lot of concern to a lot of people. We have to make sure, you guys, that we are going to be on top of this because there's a lot of worry. We want to prepare you for what is coming, and we want to show you what is happening step by step along the way. Let's jump straight in, you guys, into one of the videos I want you to watch, and I got a couple things to tell you about it. Let's go.
Since our previous FOMC meeting, economic indicators have generally come in stronger than expected, demonstrating greater momentum in economic activity and inflation. We believe, however, that events in the banking system over the past 2 weeks are likely to result in tighter credit conditions for households and businesses, which would in turn affect economic outcomes.
Okay, so let's just stop right there. This is Jerome Powell, and he's talking about tighter credit conditions. And I've been talking about this now for a year. Most people don't remember back in 2010, 2009, 10, 11, credit conditions were extremely tight. At that time, the banks didn't want to lend you a mortgage. There's a lot of the population that seem to not remember what happened, and there's a huge part of the population that has never experienced it before. Now I'm aging myself, right? But this is the problem. When the banks are tight and credit conditions are tight, they do not lend. If we go back in time and we look at 2010 and we go back to that time, they were not lending money. You had to put 50%, 60, 70% down in order to qualify for a mortgage. You had to have pristine credit. The majority of the people who were getting mortgages were people who could afford it in cash. They were like, if you want a $500,000 mortgage, you have to have $500,000 in the bank, which is just crazy, right? And that's what they were asking. So they're saying instead of interest rate hikes, this tightening of credit would be similar to this locking down of the rates, are similar to raising rates. It's going to have the same effect on the market. Whether or not they raise the rates or not, the tightening credit will have the same effect. Very, very important for you to know. This is what I've been talking about for a year. Let's continue with this guy.
It is too soon to determine the extent of these effects, and therefore too soon to tell how monetary policy should respond. As a result, we no longer state that we anticipate that ongoing rate increases will be appropriate to quell inflation. Instead, we now anticipate that some additional policy firming may be appropriate.
So did you notice that they don't have to raise rates anymore?
Closely monitor incoming data and carefully assess the actual and expected effects of tighter credit conditions on economic activity, the labor market, and inflation.
Was a pause considered for this meeting?
So we did consider that in the days running up to the meeting, and you see the decision that we made, which I'll say a couple things about. First, it was supported by a very strong consensus, and I'll be happy to explain why. And really it is that the intermeeting data on inflation and the labor market came in stronger than expected, and really before the recent events, we were clearly on track to continue with ongoing rate hikes. In fact,
okay, guys, two things. Number one is that he's talking about the number one thing that they're always looking at is the number of jobs. So if you have high employment, it's a bad thing. More people have more money, high inflation, and they're looking at high inflation. Those two big things, right? And so they are admitting, yes, we have super high inflation. We have super high employment. Both of them are big, big problems for them. And then what is the caveat to all that? Now it comes back, recent events with the banking system. The banks is what's scaring them from raising it much higher than they expected. But if we go and look at the dot plot, we already know that a year from now, they raised it from 4.1 to 4.3. They're expecting these rates to stay higher for longer. So if you're waiting for that time, it's not going to happen. I only got one more minute for you guys to watch on this, okay?
A couple of weeks ago, it looked like we'd need to raise rates over the course of the year more than we'd expected at the time of the SCP in December, the time of the December meeting. We are committed to restoring price stability, and all of the evidence says that the public has confidence that we will do so, that we'll bring inflation down to 2% over time. It is important that we sustain that confidence with our actions as well as our words. So we also assess, as I mentioned, that the events of the last 2 weeks are likely to result in some tightening of credit conditions for households and businesses, and thereby weigh on demand, on the labor market, and on inflation.
Did you see that? The weighing down of the credit. No credit for people to buy homes, no credit for businesses. This is going to weigh them down, and people will lose their jobs.
Such a tightening in financial conditions would work in the same direction as rate tightening. In principle, as a matter of fact, you can think of it as being the equivalent of a rate hike, or perhaps more than that. Of course, it's not possible to make that assessment today with any precision whatsoever. So our decision was to move ahead with a 25 basis point hike and to change our guidance, as I mentioned, from ongoing hikes to some additional hikes, maybe some policy firming may be appropriate.
Okay, so let's jump off of this, you guys. So this is what's important for us to know, is that when you throw a ball, the ball has to go up for a while, and then it pauses at the top, and then it comes crashing down. Yeah. And so when it comes crashing down, so there's an up phase, a pause phase, and a down phase. This is how it is in every single time that there are interest rate hikes, every single time. So we're going to see it go up and then pause and down. So they had a slowing of the rates. We already saw that. I called that before in stage one. We're having the pausing at the top there. Now we're pausing in Canada. We're most likely are going to be pausing in the United States coming up. Let's see. But like I said, the dot plot is showing that those rates have got to stay higher for longer. So this is going to damage some people over the long term. Now, let's take a look at some of this other stuff that I got going on for you guys. I got even more things for you. So if you like this stuff, please give me a couple likes. Click a couple like buttons for me. It would really, really help me out. Please give me a big thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. So the Canada 5-year bond, it kind of matches the United States bond. And this 2.766, you got to follow what the bond rates are doing, because this is going to dictate what your mortgage is going to be. What does that mean? Why does the bond rate have anything to do with it? Well, this is your risk-free rate. And remember, the bank sets the rate for themselves here, and they choose how much commission they want on top of it. The amount of commission is what's diminishing. It's going down, down, down. They don't care how much profit they're going to make. Why do you think today they are allowing people to have a 5-year fixed rate for exactly the same rate that they're getting it from the central bank? I want you to think about that for a second. Why do you think they are willing to make zero money in their first year? Unless the banks are sorely convinced that over the next 5 years, the rates will have to go down to compensate, and then they're going to make off like bandits later on. Why else would they be doing it for free? You got to think about these things, right? So the bond rate, please follow this, because as this has been falling, this is just one day. Let's go back 1 month, okay? Take a look at what's happened in the past month, all the way up to 3.6 here, and now it's down to 2.7. That means your interest rates have fallen by 1% in a month. Let's go back 3 months, you guys. Where did it peak out at? We have 3.6. So this is where, I mean, as the rates go up, home prices go down. As the rates come crashing down, home prices go up. So you're going to see a temporary surge in that. Now, I have this chart I wanted you to look at. Now, this chart says the surprising link between employment and recessions. This links exactly up to what we're showing you today. The unemployment and recessions, U.S. economic data, U.S. and Canada, is almost identical, preceded by a cyclical low in the unemployment rate. You need to know that. Right? This is tied at the hip. Notice that Jay Powell kept talking about employment. But now let's look. The reds are recessions, okay? And the black is employment. So as soon as unemployment goes way down, then you have a recession. Employment comes way down. More and more people have jobs. So, high means a lot of people don't have jobs. As it comes down, recession. Low jobs here, recession. Low jobs here, another recession. We saw that especially in 2007, 8, 9, like very, very, very high employment. And then bammo, you get hit. Same thing in 2020. And look at where we are today, 53-year low in employment. And this is going to smack people right between the eyes. They're not even going to see what's happening to them. So we know that the Fed is hiking rates by 0.25%. This already happened today. We also know that the Bank of Canada is worried that we're going to get stuck above 2%. This is going to be a big, big problem for them. The UK, their inflation is at 10.4%, very, very high. And Canada right here, our M2 money supply continues to go up and up and up, which means inflation is going to be on us for sure. I operate in Toronto. And so you guys, if you're ever thinking of selling your properties, please go to sellhigher.ca, absolutely free consultation to talk with me. If you're thinking about selling your property, this is where you can sell your home for more money, faster and less hassle. Also, you guys, if we look at what's happening in Canada as far as the housing, this kind of links into it, but Canada's population rose by 1 million people for the first time in 1 year. Please understand that big countries like the United States, they can't even keep up with 1 million people a year. That can overload their systems. And this is going to continue in Canada. So this is not a political channel. We talk about money. At the end of the day, anybody who comes to the country, no matter who they are, costs the country a lot of money. And so at the end of the day, it's not a person is a person is a person. That's kind of unfortunate, but it's kind of the way the job market works. Depending on your skills, you're going to be more valuable. Every single country on the planet wants the exact same thing, which is very curious, right? They want the youngest people they can, with the most money they can, the most kids they can, and the most skills they can. Highly educated, young, with kids and skills. Everybody wants that. And unfortunately, Canada has become a place that's very high taxes and high benefits and rule of law. So we're getting a lot of people come to the country that have money and skills. They dump their cash here, mostly in real estate, and then they take off for the hills because they don't want to pay the taxes for it. And then the people that we're left with, the 1 million people that are here, unfortunately, they don't always have the best skills and so forth, but we want to help them, right? A lot of them are coming from Ukraine, war zones and so forth. At the end of the day, we don't have houses for those 1 million people. So the government comes in and starts taking over a lot of hotels, a lot of conference centers to try to help them out. At the end of the day, we're watching what's happening with the budget as all the budget items are getting slashed instead of one item. At one point, and I don't know if it's going to be next year or 10 years from now, I don't know. At one point, if we do have to spend money as a country, we have to be expecting some sort of return. We're going to have to be balancing our budgets and being able to spend what we make. If I make $100,000 a year, I have to live within that. I cannot live making $100,000 and spending $150,000. For some delusion, some people believe if you have a family, like 5 people, if all 5 of us make $100,000 and all spend $150,000 a year, we're going to go broke too. What if you're 100 people? What if you're millions? What if you're a whole country? At the end of the day, we cannot spend money at such a great level, way higher than what we're taking in. At one point, we have to be responsible. Unfortunately, Canada, United States, the majority of the Western countries have gone past the point of no return. We're now past 130% debt to GDP. It is not the point of not borrowing money. We need to borrow money. Borrowing money is what has created the wealth of the West, bar none. The ability to borrow money to build businesses, borrow money to buy houses and whatever else. But if we borrow money, we have to take on some risk. And the chances of us failing has to be a real possibility for everybody. Unfortunately, that's just the way the system works. We want to make sure that you're educated, that you can build a business, that you can buy a home, because the government cannot protect everybody for every scenario. It'll never work that way. So we want to help you build a rock solid base and be able to leapfrog ahead of everybody else. If you actually break down, the American dream is not a house and a picket fence and a dog and, 2 kids. This is not the American dream. The American dream or the Canadian dream or whatever the West kind of ideal is the ability for upward class mobility to improve your situation and make it better than the life that you had growing up. And maybe your kids can have a better life than you had. I think you would agree with me. So that chance is the thing that we can't let go. We have to always try to be able to leave the place better than we found it, right? For our kids. And that's a really, really important thing I think all of us could get behind. I want the very best for you guys. Now, for you guys who are now struggling to get to that point, the next 2 years is going to dictate the next 20 years of your life. It is going to be the best buying opportunity that the majority of people 40 and under have ever had in their entire life. in the next 2 years, you're going to have an opportunity to set yourself up for life and build up that wealth building that you can and buy good real estate at really discounted prices. I'm super excited for it. I hope that you're excited for it. The times can be very, very bright for you. Remember, it's not always doom and gloom for everybody. For some people, it's very good. So remember, don't fight the Fed. Work within the confines that we're in. There are always deals to be had. Stick with me and we'll help you find some of those great deals for you over time. Wish you the very, very best, you guys. Hope that you have a fantastic night. I love you. And if this gives you any value, please consider subscribing. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. I'd love to know how you like this stuff. Have a great night, everybody.